Hello, welcome to another Life Sciences webcast. I'm Kevin Davis, Editor-in-Chief of BioIT World, part of the Cambridge Health Tech Media Group. We are here at the NextGeneration Sequencing Conference, CHI's conference in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm joined by Kevin Ulmer, the keynote speaker at this conference, and Kevin is the founder, president, and chief science officer of a new company, a very exciting company named Genome Corp. We'll get into Genome Corp in just a couple of minutes. But the premise of your presentation, which I think probably surprised a lot of people here, is that there is still life in Sanger sequencing.
Right. It's somewhat perplexing to have spent the last 20 years of my professional career promoting the notion that we were going to need something better than Sanger, first to do the reference genome, and then ultimately to do personalized genomes or individual genomes. But having spent that 20 years understanding what the warts and the wrinkles and the real-world problems and the detailed problems are with all these next-generation technologies, I've essentially been born again to the notion that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with Sanger if you view it slightly differently from the way it's been practiced today.
So you come full circle in a way. We'll have to we'll get into that in just a second. So 20 years ago, you really set out on a limb to try to find an alternative to Sanger sequencing, and you founded really, I think it's fair to say, the first single molecule sequencing company. Is that a fair statement?
No, that's a fair statement.
Okay.
So
that was
Seq Limited, which I started in 1987.
Yeah.
At the same time, Wally Gilbert, Nobel laureate from Harvard, was talking about forming another private venture to go after the genome. This was 4 years before the official start of the Genome Project. But Wally, being Wally, and Nobel laureate, Biogen founder, etc., was getting lots of media attention. He simply wanted to go build a factory in Southeast Asia, fill it up with Maxim Gilbert sequencers, which didn't really exist at the time, but just go at it in a sort of commercial environment. And the world was still debating, could we, couldn't we, should we, shouldn't we, how many billions, how many decades? And so it was the hubris, how could Wally possibly presume to single-handedly go off and do this when the world was saying it was going to be billions of dollars? And so Wally and I used to get together and debate, was a new technology needed, or could you simply scale some existing technology? And so I started the company at that time when the stock market crashed in October of '87. That was the end of Genome Corp of that time, Wally's company. He then found his outlet for his interest in sequencing through Myriad Genetics, which does the BRCA sequencing, for example. But we've sort of reused the name, sort of with Wally's blessing, at least not his objections.
Good. So we'll come to what Genome Corp is all about in just a minute, but in the intervening period, well, first of all, what happened to Seq?
Seq eventually changed its name to Prelux, refocused its technology around a platform for high-throughput cellular imaging called the In-Cell Analyzer, was acquired by Amersham in 2000, now part of GE Life Sciences. The company itself was disbanded, and there's still a few folks, I think, still left there, but others have scattered in there.
So more recently you've been doing, or you were doing some serious consulting work for one of the major new next-generation companies, Helicos. You had a relationship with Stan Lapidus, the founder of that company?
Yes, I had heard about Stan from as far back as '87. The initial venture capital that went into Seq came from Jim Morgan at Morgan Holland Ventures. Jim also was one of the initial investors in a company called Cytec, which was Stan's first company, which developed thin prep for pap smears. And he always used to tell me about this guy Stan and how we ought to really get together. We'd hit it off. And it wasn't until Stan went to found his second company, Exact Sciences, in 1995, that we actually met. I helped Stan put Exact together. I was co-inventor on their first couple of patents and on their scientific advisory board for the first 4 years of the company's existence. So we had worked together closely at that time period. And then right when Exact went public, they started a project working on digital PCR. So I went back and did another year's worth of consulting for Exact, working on amplification technology, which is now sort of the basis behind at least 3 of the 4 of the next generation sequencing.
And then when Stan was launching Helicos, which is about to debut its prototype instrument, the Heloscope, you spent, I think, a year or two there working.
Right. So Stan, after Exact, had gone to Flagship Ventures as an entrepreneur in residence. I did some consulting for Flagship on some other ventures he was looking at, but then he came up with this article from Steve Quake at Caltech by Ido Blavslavsky, basically demonstrating proof of concept of single molecule sequencing in a sort of different format from the one we had been pursuing. And so I wrote a white paper for Flagship helped Stan while they were putting the company together and pointed him to some of the one of the key initial hires they made. And then as soon as they had the funding, served as a full-time consulting scientist for the first 2 years of the company's operation.
So at this particular meeting, the CHI Next Generation Sequencing meeting, we're hearing a stream of really exciting scientific applications, and there are many other new technologies coming about. Hard in a minute or whatever to give a succinct answer, but what's your sense of the overall impact of next generation sequencing technologies? Pros and cons.
Right.
Clearly, you see both.
Right. So it's been a wonderful infusion of energy, interest, and capital into sequencing technology that, in some ways, has been dormant or almost moribund. If you look at the ABI 3730XL, the sort of state-of-the-art instrument, it's been out for 5 years now without a replacement. So the initial emergence of the 454 technology and the wonderful job they did of getting it in the hands of investigators doing everything from Neanderthals to honeybees, as we've heard about here, really showed the power of high-depth coverage, high-speed, low-cost sequencing. That's been followed by the introduction of the Solexa, now Illumina platform, and I guess just within the last week or so, the ABI Solid platform. So it's very clear from the initial reports that all of these technologies are essentially opening up a range of new possibilities for applying sequencing to problems that people just couldn't afford to tackle in the past or simply didn't have the capacity to deal with. But it's not clear yet whether any of these platforms is really the ultimate solution. If you look far enough down the road, yes, there are many research applications, and it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. But the long-term market opportunity is really resequencing lots and lots of humans. So it's a very narrow problem in that sense, although it's probably one of the most challenging ones. And it's not clear that these new technologies will address those effectively.
And so you think, and Genome Corp's mission is to prove that Sanger sequencing can provide the mechanism to do that.
Right, and it's partly because we now have a 30-year investment by the sort of global research community in Sanger sequencing technology. So we understand it better than any other sequencing method. We understand all its nuances and subtleties, its error properties, and how to deal with those. It has a versatility to its chemistry that allows you to adapt it to all kinds of templates. And so the simple comfort, knowledge, experience we have with it is a tremendous asset in its favor. You don't have to figure out, all these new things from scratch. It also offers the longest read length of any of the technologies by far and the most accurate reads. The problem with it has been that you just simply cost too much to prepare all the front-end reactions that you feed into the sequencers, and we think we have a way to resolve that.
And I know you're unable, for obvious reasons, to divulge too much, but you're going to miniaturize it, you're going to parallelize it?
Essentially, it moves to a one-pot sample preparation method, in some ways similar to the beaming or the emulsion PCR that's behind some of these other platforms, where you essentially are doing all of your reactions simultaneously in one reaction vessel, but in some kind of small compartmentalized spaces that allow you to do literally tens of millions of Sanger read preps all at the same time.
And Genome Corp isn't going to be making instruments, it's going to be sort of the Netflix of DNA sequencing.
Well, my philosophy has always been from the days of Seq that sequencing really should be an information service business. That what life scientists want, whether you're an anthropologist, an ecologist, or a clinician, is sequence information, not another expensive box that you have to have, supplies, reagents, maintenance and support contracts, and all the rest of it. Because of the Genome Project, the world has really become genome-centric. Everyone wants sequence information, and they want it in vast quantities and at very low prices. So our belief is that an information service model opens up the opportunity to address this market in a very different way and removes a lot of engineering constraints on the design of the technology that we use that will allow us to take advantage of economies of scale and approaches that just simply won't fit into a box that I would sell you to put on your lab bench.
Do you have interest in actually providing the means to collect samples and deliver results to individuals, to patients, or would you prefer to partner with other groups who might?
The whole question as to how personal genomics will be delivered is still an open question. There are a huge number of issues behind it. We clearly want to be involved in that. We don't simply view providing bulk sequence information, unanalyzed, unannotated, as the highest value we could derive from our service business.
Gotcha.
So we clearly want to be part of the value chain all the way to the patient.
So you've announced some seed funding for the venture. What's the timeline going forward? Are you going to try a pilot program?
So the plan is to try and pilot this new version of Sanger sequencing over the course of this next year. And based on the performance of that pilot, pick a design capacity for the sequencing factory, and then essentially put that into operation in year 2 and have it turned on and ready to deliver sequence sort of 2 years from now.
Well, it's a very exciting venture, Kevin. Wish you all the best with that.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching. I'm Kevin Davis, BioIT World. We'll see you next time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.